Good afternoon. Welcome, everyone. I'm László, Kulcsár, Interim Dean of the College of Ag Sciences at Penn State. I want to welcome everybody at our annual Farm Show Town Hall meeting with PA Department of Agriculture Secretary Russell Redding. We do these town halls twice a year, once at Farm Show, once at Ag Progress Days, to give you, our stakeholders, some update on our activities and garner your input into Pennsylvania priorities. Before we begin, please note that this is a hybrid event, and with attendees participating via Zoom as well as in person, and we are recording this session. After some brief opening remarks from the both of us, we will have a Q&A session. Thank you for those of you who included questions in the registration process. We're going to start with those ones, but then we're going to give opportunity for people in the room to ask questions. If you are on the Zoom link, please use the Zoom Q&A and not the chat to ask any questions. And Mary's going to help us covering that. All right. So first, I'd like to welcome Secretary Redding here today. Governor Wolf nominated Russell to serve as the 26th Secretary of Agriculture for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania back in January 15 and was confirmed in May 2015, and then again in May 23, following his reappointment by Governor Shapiro. He is the former dean of the School of Agriculture and Environmental Sciences at Del Valley College, so that means that he's already done my job. So he knows everything that I know, which is not a, that's a low bar. And has an extensive experience as a public servant, spending more than 20 years in Pennsylvania, in Harrisburg, and then in Washington, D.C. But most importantly, he is a graduate of our college with a bachelor's in agricultural education and a master's in agriculture and extension education. In addition to that, he's also a graduate of Agribusiness Executive Program. Our college has enjoyed a long and productive relationship with Secretary Redding and PDA, and we are very grateful for his leadership and partnership. Thank you for joining us today. And before I turn it over to you, let me introduce Blair Siegfried, the Associate Dean for Research in the college. And he's here to help us with the questions, particularly if I get like a really tough one on research, and I'm just going to look at him and then he'll take it over. So, Secretary.
Yeah, Dean, thank you. And good afternoon, everybody. Good to see you. Thank you for being at the Pennsylvania Farm Show to help us launch a new year. And we have, as we've done each year, sort of put a theme to this show of connecting our communities. And I can't think of a better way to demonstrate that than with our partnership with Penn State and the College of Ag Sciences. And we can talk more about that today, but I think about these connections, and they are deep-rooted, right? It goes back as both our land grant development and department sort of progress over the years, but it's also interwoven in so many ways that sometimes it's difficult to know where a department sort of agriculture begins and where Penn State, the College of Agriculture, begins, right, or ends. And I think that's a good thing because it shows the connections between us in a way. It also recognizes that the work that we do in the regulatory realm within the department is supported by and enhanced in so many ways through the research efforts of Penn State and the College of Ag, but also in its extension and the extension of that knowledge to the community. And you really need both to do what is expected, I think, of both sort of public health and safety at the same time, public appreciation and just knowledge gain at many levels. So it's a really wonderful partnership. It is sincere in that the work that we do is a true partnership. I view the dean and the college as an extension of the work that we do. I can give you many examples of just sort of recent history where what we have done together has made a difference. Huge difference. It has changed, trajectory of industries and sectors. Always like to point out one to demonstrate the work. Many of you will remember the plumppox virus that first time in North America in Pennsylvania, in Adams County, in 1999. And I think at that point, I mean, we had no history here, obviously, with it. And then just to see years on, almost 10 years, to actually eradicate the virus from Pennsylvania and America was nothing short of a miracle, right? But it was done through the science. It was done through the outreach. It was done through the grower engagement and all of those meetings, but the very intentional science that occurred to bring us to a point where we both understood that virus, could eradicate the virus, and then with confidence, allow for the growers to begin replanting their orchards. And if you go to Adams County today, that's where I live. I drive those roads. And what was feared at the time to be, the end of peach and stone fruit production in Pennsylvania, but particularly in that core area, it is a thriving business today. And the growers will tell you that, thank goodness, right, that we found a solution and they could enter that back into that business because of the diversification of consumer interest, the desire for direct market of peaches, what it does to the income cycle of producers to have something other than an apple in the fall, to have peaches in the summer. They're the types of things that I'm proud of. And that was only possible because of the Fruit and Extension Research Center at Biglerville, the Penn State research, the connections that Penn State made to both the rest of the United States, but also the knowledge gained from research and researchers around the world. And so we are a product today of that work and that partnership as one example. Most recent, however, has been on the high path avian influenza. And we had this scare when everybody, was off singing Christmas carols, right? All of a sudden, it appears. And it appears, several days before Christmas. Completely changed, the landscape. It took 50 people away from their families on Christmas Day to fight this virus. And here we are in the first week of 2024 in a good position, looking back over the last 10, 12 days. That partnership with both Penn State, the Department of Agriculture, and of course our paddles system, animal health system, made that possible, puts us in a position of confidence. So I'll just end by saying that I really appreciate the town hall opportunities. There are things that are clearly Penn State is the better responder to some of these things, the technical experts, some of the depth of subject matter issues. But just know that the partnership between the department, Commonwealth, quite frankly, and our land-grant University at Penn State is something that we value. We recognize that it is unique in that I spend a lot of time with my colleagues around the country, and everybody here thinks they're normal, right? I say it often just to make the point that what you see and hear and the dynamics of town halls and people and being 2 feet away from each other is not universal between a Department of Agriculture and land-grant universities across America. It just isn't. And we have something really special here that we honor and really can keep building on. And final would be that there are a number of issues that we have to be heavily engaged in. I'll just say, because there are things that are of making of someplace else in the world, whether it's on food security concerns or trade issues or invasive species, that it's going to take a high degree of engagement with the both partners here between Penn State and the Department of Agriculture. So I'll stop there and just say thank you to the dean and team for their work and their engagement with us and the partnership that they demonstrate every day, keeping us connected. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Can slide that mic too.
Yeah. Thank you, Secretary. And again, that partnership is very special to us because, it's Penn State. We do research, we do teaching, we do extension, but we could not do that without the policy arm and without the representation of the ag industries and producers and stakeholders in the state for what we do. So let me give you a really brief update on the college. I'm not going to talk about too many issues. I'm going to highlight two capital projects and the special project. So the two capital projects I'm going to talk about, one is the Animal Diagnostic Lab that Secretary Redding referred to with the avian flu. PDA has committed $50 million for the upgrading of that lab. You know, we are working with the architects right now.
There's the applause for that.
Oh, thank you. That was for the $50 million. For the architects, that's yet to be determined. So that was a very generous sort of like support for that enterprise. And then the other one is what we call PlantWorks, and some of you might have heard about that. PlantWorks is a long-term visionary project to completely reimagine plant science in the college and sort of like update our facilities, some of which date back from the good old days in the 1950s. And I always tell them that let's just wait another 20 years and maybe we could have like a museum or something like this is how we did things back in Oppenheimer's time. Right? Okay, so what PlantWorks is going to do is going to connect agricultural sciences to all kinds of other academic fields to kind of like reinvent how we grow crops, how we conserve the environment, how we think about plants and anything that it involves. This is going to have state-of-the-art greenhouses and other facilities, including a biological containment facility. And again, it goes back to ADL and the avian flu. You know, a large part of the college is making sure that we are being prepared for whatever the next thing is going to come. Because once we fix one thing, then the only thing you could be sure of that there's going to be something else coming. So it's not just we need to find a way to, you know, address the spotted lanternfly or avian flu. We need to find a way to develop facilities and skill sets and people who can rapidly respond to those issues whenever they emerge. So these are two very good examples for a complex mission of, you know, research, teaching, and extension. But none of this would be possible without workforce development, which is a very unique challenge for the state and for all states, I believe, and a strong, very important initiative for the college. And an integral part of our land grant mission. For those of you who follow President Bendapudi's sort of like messages, you probably heard, and a couple of months ago, she made a declaration about improving the land grant impact, which we took it as a very positive note and recognition of what the college has been doing for the university. I mean, there is no land grant without ag. Ag has been the land grant. This is what we do. This is now being recognized at the top level of the university to move things forward. So very grateful for that. So that leads to my last sort of like update, and that's at least the last major one, which is really a concentrated effort to advance ag tech and innovation in this new environment. So for those of you who looked back at agriculture from the Paleolithic times, or, you know, God knows where, you know that all technological innovation started with agriculture. Agriculture was the first field where any technological innovation started. And that over thousands of years led to incredible, you know, human advancements. And this is the same today. We are living in the same age. There's all kinds of human advancements. It's just the pace is much faster, because this now includes emerging technologies such as artificial intelligence, robotics, precision ag, remote sensing, gene editing, augmented reality, and so forth. So given all those challenges, and given that life moves on, we decided to use our already extensive expertise to engage in these areas in a very concentrated fashion and bring together all the skill sets and all the issues that we want to be a strong and leading player in this field in agriculture. So this effort is going to be led by the Associate Dean for Research. And at this point, we're evaluating what others are doing, making sure that we are not duplicating anything, and also making sure that whatever we are doing is going to serve Pennsylvania first and foremost. Pennsylvania is a very different agricultural sector and environment than other states. We want to make sure that when we address all these very popular labels from emerging tech, ChatGPT, AIs, and the end of the world because of Skynet and all of that stuff. We do this in a way that's going to help you all, stakeholders in Pennsylvania. We don't do research for the sake of research. We do these things to help others. That's part of the land grant mission. So this will be done through very strong partnerships and collaboration with all kinds of actors in the state, and that have already been started. So I can only say and advise to stay tuned for future news out of the college from Blair's office. And I guarantee that you're not going to be disappointed in that. So that concludes my remarks. And I think at this point, you could move over to the Q&A session. Right,
sure.
Okay. So we're going to address the questions that were submitted first. So what is your vision for how AI and other emerging technology innovations will transform the face of agriculture across the food, farm, and natural resource system sectors? What do we need to focus on positioning PA agriculture for success as new technology innovations come online?
Great. So you're giving this to me first.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I think there's, two things I would say just to kick off the conversation. One is you can never replace sort of the human touch in the work that we do. Right? I think that's part of the human side of the work that we do in agriculture generally. And I think making sure that that's always sort of present is part of what differentiates the industries and what we, how we do what we do, et cetera. But clearly we are also not exempt by any measure, as you note in your introductory comments about sort of technology's role and just how that sort of influences what we do in both the industry and production and distribution systems, et cetera. So I think that's part of the, what we see AI helping us do better. I think is the gene editing work, look at the genetics, both plant and animal genetics. I think how we harness the decision-making, the marketplace side of decision-making is I think there's a role there of how you capture that data and how we use that data for purposes of real-time decisions about markets and what sells and where it sells and formulations. I think that's a piece of it. I think there's also, part of just it's embedded in things and how that, from the seed technologies to the equipment component, I think is part of how I see it. But I would never want to lose that human touch, but I want to be augmented, my own intelligence augmented by the data that we can capture from the marketplace that helps us make a better decision about what our consumers want or what society needs. And then I guess the place that I think it's still not clear, but I'm sure others have thought about this, where and how we apply that AI technology to climate and determinations of the particularly around the changes that have occurred as a result of practices being applied, and then being able to use those practices for purposes of individual producer or at least sector monetization of that practice. And to me, there's a gap in there right now, right? Because you don't know the full data set of what it is we're actually what we have as present data sets around soil and climate. But everybody talks about the marketplace, benefiting from those sustainability measures being a benefit to both industry and individual producers. At some point, you've got to have some pretty significant data analytics that tell you the difference between almost by soil type, and the other overlays of characteristics, that there's actually been a change and what the value of that change is. So to me, it's a complicated question. I get it at one level that it's part and parcel to the industry, and we've adopted every bit of that technology need to continue to advance. But at the same time, I think there's still some question about how it applies. And hopefully, I'll just say this as a footnote, hopefully, that it doesn't drive to larger, more complex operation at the expense of the smaller producer, particularly in Pennsylvania. I'm very concerned about that this is another one of those differentiators. So whatever technology and AI apply, I want it to be sort of size neutral. And as educators and extension teams and department, as a public policy, we should make sure that that has application regardless of the type of operation, the size of operation, and it not be allowed to differentiate who actually is a beneficiary, but ultimately economically who is a beneficiary.
Right, excellent. And let me just add that I really love your starting point. I mean, you can't replace humans. There is no way for that. And this has been done in all technological cycles throughout human history. Remember back to the Luddites when the first, machines were introduced during the Industrial Revolution. All of them thought that this is going to be a horrible thing, and then humans are going to be completely unnecessary anymore. And no, it's not. It doesn't work that way. It's a technology. It can be used for a number of ways, and our job is to make sure that it is used for the good of the Commonwealth. It is used through ways that actually advance agriculture and advance our societies. And again, at the end of the day, you will need people to operate those technologies, right? So it's again, and you will need people to understand the impact of those technologies. You cannot have an AI technology doing something to production and another AI technology evaluating the first AI technology. That just makes no sense. You will always have people. And our job is to make sure that we could train those people to be successful operators of these new opportunities. Mm-hmm. And then through that, providing, again, this is the workforce development part, providing them new frontiers and new ideas. This is ag in the 21st century. It's different from ag in the 20th century. It's different from ag in the 15th century, right? It's still ag. It's still about food production. It's still about the same basic tenets of what we've been doing forever. It's just being done in a different way. And we want those kids who are very technologically savvy and very much interested in these new technologies to be parts of that. So let me...
Just a few... Yeah. Thank you. So just in response to a few things that in culture and Secretary Redding said, your point about this technology is something that has to be appropriate for Pennsylvania and its growers. We certainly recognize that up front, and some of the bigger initiatives that are happening across the country in the Midwest or in the Southeast are so much different from Pennsylvania. We actually feel like that is an advantage for Pennsylvania, that we can take a more holistic approach because we have this huge rural-urban interface. We have huge acreage of forests in the state, and these technologies have to be used in ways that leverage the diversity of Pennsylvania. I think László's point about developing workforce, Penn State's situated in a way that we have both research, teaching, as well as extension, and that positions us to train the next generation of users to adopt these technologies in ways that can be appropriate and increase our market share and profitability of our growers. And I think the last point I wanted to make is that, we don't see the technology driving the research. We feel like we have agricultural, natural resource issues, climate change, and water quality, and things that we can take these tools and improve the things that we're meant to be doing, and very committed to what has always been our mission, just taking a new set of tools to apply to those goals of making agriculture a solution to some of our problems as opposed to the contributor to the problem. Thanks.
All right. Okay. So Next one. How is global warming affecting the crops we plant, and how can we take advantage of this rather than being harmed by this? How are your organizations addressing factors that are contributing to global warming issues? That's climate smart agriculture in other names. Can I pass this to you? Oh, okay. So I was hoping for a break to collect my. All right. So climate. Okay, climate challenges. It's real. It's gonna come. It's something we have to deal with. And like vector-borne diseases, if you ever had to deal with one, that's part of that story. So the smart thing is not to sort of like walk away from it, but the smart thing is tackle these things head on and look for opportunities to advance agriculture and prepare agriculture for a situation when the climate's going to be different from what it is today. So what Penn State does is that, again, we have the research capacity to try to look for ways to improve crop resilience, to improve production mechanisms, to try out new ways of doing agriculture. And then one example for that is a recent USDA grant that the college received for $25 million to assist the dairy industry to implementing on climate smart practices. And again, the dairy industry, we don't need to tell you that its importance in Pennsylvania. It's also a fairly strong player in understanding climate smart agriculture practices. So that's a project that is run through SAFES, the Penn State's Institute for Sustainable Agriculture, Food and Environmental Science. And it's built on partnerships between dairy scientists, producers, industry organizations, government agencies, and others to try to improve economic value of dairy production. And then, we have a collaboration with, to get the numbers right, 69 dairy producers, approximately 32,500 acres, and more than 28,000 dairy cows. And that is done through research and extension to come up with new ways to take that segment of the agricultural sector in Pennsylvania to test out new ways to address climate issues. And of course, again, we don't do this just for the sake of science. We do this to establish these long-term partnerships for the industry to meet these goals. Again, there will have to be ways to sort of like address climate smart issues because the climate is not going to go away. And then again, we try to focus on those industries in Pennsylvania that are providing the bulk of the local ag production. I'm sure you could answer this much better than I did.
I don't know about it better. I mean, I think there's, and I appreciate whoever asked the question, for raising it, because I think it's one of these concerns that comes in many forms, right? And unfortunately, they are words that have been politicized to the point that as soon as you talk about it, folks begin to shut down, right? They take a position, unfortunately, right? Because I think in agriculture, there's not an industry that's got a more intimate relationship with the climate than farmers. That's reality. It defines who we are, where we grow, what we grow, who benefits. You make your list. So it is an issue that, from my perspective, agriculture should own and be very proud of us. This is not about always in some defensive posture. The truth is that the work that we do in agriculture, those practices that we apply, are the foundation of how you ultimately sort of mitigate the implications of climate or the adaptation of such, right? Mike Roth has taught me that there are two approaches here, right? There's an adaptation to this. You can change or you can try to reduce the implications. And maybe some combination of both is what it takes. But that's inside the calculus of what it is that we do as producers every day now. How do you apply that going forward? It's a more intense, but the principles are the same. Ultimately, it takes a change to something, land practice, application, whatever, to give you some result that's different than the result we have today. And that 300 million acres across America, or the 21 million acres that we have in Pennsylvania, what we do with that and how we manage that and steward that has huge implications for what it means to address, either adapt or mitigate the climate consequences. So that I think that's an important starting point, is that there are things we can do, we have done, and believe that in Pennsylvania, we've got a 40-year head start with these conservation practices and BMPs that are the foundation of some of the most important sort of, climate management components that should allow us to, I think, go with some confidence. And we've tried this. We know how to do cover crops. It was with the No-Till Alliance yesterday, and one of the pioneers of the Leopold, right? And Mr. Myers, right, who spent a lifetime as an agronomist, state agronomist, and to hear his story, I think this is the type of thing that I want producers and others who have raised questions about agriculture's role to look at that as sort of a really leading role. So how do we address it? One is, I think you have to talk about it and talk about it with some conviction that this is something that we know how to do. And we're on the front lines of the impacts. We're also on the front lines of the opportunities. The forest products industry in PA is a great example as well. It's not just the production ag, what the forest industry, products industry has done. I think that's important. And final point would be that as we look at the climate concerns, I think there are really important and valuable lessons for the work that we've done around nutrient management that should be applied for how we talk about climate and the climate consequences, right? That we talked about nutrient management for 40 years. We haven't used the word management in the context of climate. Right? And I often think about that how we present the topic and the issue has implications for how people think about it. So if we apply the principle of nutrient management to climate management, ultimately that's what you're doing. You're trying to manage this climate in a way, right, that either allows you to adapt or mitigate the circumstances. But that's not a term that has historically been applied to what we've said we're going to do or have to do with the climate. So terminology is important, presentation is important, but it's not a topic that we should shy from. And we just have to sort of look at how we then adopt and adapt to that. And let's be honest about it. I think the presentation of what we've done just with cover crops is one sort of element of that. Again, is something we know how to do and do it really, really well. That is one of the major indicators as to whether you're managing the climate for the crop purposes, right? I look at Adams County again and the varieties that those growers are producing. Some of those varieties were in the Shenandoah Valley 15 years ago. And they've adopted really, really well to Pennsylvania climate, right? That was a southern, it's 100 and some miles south of us. Now they're really thriving. And they've integrated those as part of their fresh market production because it puts varieties in the marketplace ahead of what would normally have been there with other varieties. So it's not all negative, is my point. And how we present it and talk about it, I think, is important for society. I think we can be leaders, thought leaders in that space, and then keep demonstrating, as the No-Till Alliance has done, that the best way to approach this is peer to peer, right? What works? So I'll stop.
Can I just add one? I think I was away from Pennsylvania for 35 years, so I'm coming back and to recognize how important the effort was in developing no-till agriculture. I think Pennsylvania is a leader in that, and many of the connections that were made during that time are the same connections that we leveraged to develop this climate smart ag proposal. And there's not too many places like Pennsylvania that can have that network in place and really be able to leverage it to initiate a whole new area of work that I think is important. And the other point again is to come back to this idea that agriculture is the solution rather than the problem. And I think more and more I'm convinced that if we use the right tools in the right way, that we can get to that mitigation that Secretary discussed. I also think that Pennsylvania has great opportunity, and our climate, unlike California and Southeast, that is suffering centuries of conditions that are not conducive to agriculture. Pennsylvania has actually been doing pretty well in terms of the effects of climate change. So we shouldn't lose sight of the fact that we can maybe take advantage of this.
Thank you. And let me just add one thing. So throughout my academic career, I always felt that agriculture is where the common sense people are, right? It's not drama, it's not nonsense, it's common sense. I mean, if you do agriculture, you cannot be anything but common sense. You have to be prepared, you have to take the challenge, you have to understand things, and you have to react to those in that way. And I think that because our field that's an advantage that we have, that we could address these issues, we could present these issues, we could talk about these issues, putting the drama part away and focus on the solutions. And I think that's why it's really important to spread the message that, you know, ag is not part of the problem, it's part of the solution. I think it's an important addition to it. All right, so a question about the definition and vision for urban agriculture. What is urban agriculture? So I'm going to say just a few words. When we think about urban agriculture, we typically see like these urban gardens that people do, you know, like vegetables, kind of like it's a cool thing because you do something with the soil and then something grows out of it and then you post it on Facebook and it's going to pick trees. So obviously that's very important because it provides an interface for people who otherwise are not engaged in any type of agriculture. But the way how we think about this urban agriculture is really you're not going to produce most of the food in urban areas, but you're going to consume most of the food in urban areas. So there's an interface between where the food is produced and where the food is consumed. And we have to be sure that whoever is consuming the food will understand where the food is coming from and how the food is being produced and what does it really take. So, and I think that what we're moving towards, particularly in cooperative extension, urban extension is really focusing on those kinds of challenges that people in urban areas have. It's not this kind of like single issue of how to establish more urban gardens to help provide nutritious food. It's really how to understand the urban population's ideas and issues with food production, food consumption, food safety. And again, just as a demographer who spent most of his career understanding the difference between urban and rural, which is not a binary, there's all kinds of scale in between. I think it's really important to take that into consideration and not think about urban agriculture, not think about just Philly and Pittsburgh and their gardens. But it's a far more complex issue than that, and I think we are ready to take it on.
Yeah, Dean, thank you. And I think this is one of the great sort of developments of, you know, the last couple of years is this conversation about, you know, what is agriculture, right? And I think it forces some, you know, extended sort of thinking and conversations that, you know, we've conveniently as a society have defined agriculture in sort of one dimension. And it's whatever it was historically. And what urban ag has done is sort of forced us to sort of think about who is ag, what is ag, where is ag, why is ag? And those sets of questions, I think, allow for more intelligent conversation than about what the food system looks like. So urban agriculture, in some respects, is about food equity and who has access to it. We spend a lot of time and money and resources trying to feed people, right, and try to connect people. We hear all the time about, you know, the general public doesn't really appreciate or see or understand ag. So urban ag also then presents a dimension of allowing people to see what it looks like in different scales, but the principles are the same, right? It's about a seed. It's about science. It's about hard work. It's about water. You make your list of those things that are attributes to the agricultural industry, and they apply. They're size neutral to urban areas and rural areas. So I think it is complex, and I think it's been one of those good developments. It's brought a whole nother set of conversations with it from a public policy standpoint. It's allowed for much richer engagement. I can say firsthand the level of engagement with members of the House and Senate, irrespective of committee, has been much richer because we've engaged in conversations about urban agriculture. And it's allowed for stormwater discussions. It's allowed for food access discussions. It's a poverty question. It's a obesity question. There's a health and health equity concern. So there's a whole subset of things that are spawned by the simple expression of urban agriculture. And what I love about it, much like the rest of ag, and I'll just give you my personal view here. I don't like the amplifier of urban and rural. I don't do it for rural agriculture. I don't say rural ag, it's agriculture. So hopefully getting to a point where we simply say it's agriculture. It just has applications. But how we talk about that, how we engage in it, and I've seen that firsthand in the legislature, and quite frankly, the PA Farm Bill is part of that journey of having a lot of folks who now see ag in places where previously maybe it was there, but didn't have the recognition or expression of appreciation, and it wasn't sort of held up or out as something of pride from a department and a commonwealth. And now it is. And we've seen an amazing sort of response to that. And just trying to change this narrative that there are a lot of people who want to be part of this industry. They just happen to be different places with different sets of tools, right? And different soil characteristics, all those things. But nonetheless, have the same sort of desire to be productive, to have the same level of pride that I have as a producer in Adams County, to do things that, only the soil and growing something provides.
Oh, let me. Okay.
Sorry.
No, you guys covered
Okay.
it very well.
All right.
Yep.
So I'm gonna have two more questions, and then we're gonna open the floor. One I'm going to punt to Blair because he's an entomologist, and actually he can respond to that. And one's gonna be going for the secretary. So the next question was: provide an update on the spotted lanternfly. Has a natural predator for the lanternfly been discovered?
Well, I am an entomologist, but László forgot to mention that I only saw my first lanternfly about a year ago. And so I can't say that I'm well versed in spotted lanternfly biology. But I will say that our college has been deeply committed to providing information that will assist growers, homeowners with the best approaches to dealing with this invasive insect. And make sure I'm on the right page here. So we are continuing to gather data to contain and manage this insect pest. Our college works closely with USDA and with the recent movement of spotted lanternfly to New York, Ohio, New Jersey. We are beginning to develop partnerships beyond the state of Pennsylvania to better understand how this insect affects agriculture and our properties. Certainly, one of the biggest concerns with spotted lanternflies is its ability to infest our vineyards and cause significant losses of vines for grape production. And that is where we are investing a lot of our time and effort to better understand the significance of this pest. And so an additional grant is currently being pursued to support research and extension specifically to vineyards. Another proposal led by Penn State was recently submitted to USDA with letters of support and endorsement from Pennsylvania Department of Agriculture. I think PDA has been a very willing and able partner in how Penn State has dealt with the issues of spotted lanternfly. We are working with vineyard owners and managers here in Pennsylvania, as well as the National Grape Alliance. As far as natural enemies associated with potentially managing spotted lanternfly populations, my understanding is that a lot of our native predators, natural enemies of spotted or of insects more generally, will actively consume spotted lanternfly. And so those organisms have been identified. Where we're focusing our effort now is on understanding what role they play in regulating the population of spotted lanternfly. We know they're out there, we know they consume them, but what role do they actually play? And that's where we're trying to understand. The methods for both non-chemical and chemical control of spotted lanternfly are available in the newly revised Penn State Extension Spotted Lanternfly Management Guide, which is available for download from the Penn State Extension. Hard copies are also available. The last comment I want to make about spotted lanternfly is this is not the last invasive pest that's going to come to our state. And I think one of the really valuable things that we can do as a result of spotted lanternfly infestations is to better understand the next invasion, better understand what approaches are going to be useful to either contain the pest or simply understand what we have to do to manage it when it gets here. And so our college has recently made a hire of a really talented invasion biologist who her work is to proactively identify what the next invasive pest is going to be. So we're better prepared than we were for spotted lanternfly. So thank you.
Right. Okay, so
If I just say 2 points. One, it's just a note of appreciation to Penn State and the team at large on spotted lanternfly. I mean, it's really been an extraordinary job, right? The specialists, the hiring. It's not unlike the plum pox story earlier, is that this came upon us, all of a sudden it's here, it's one municipality, it's 2, it's 5, it's et cetera. It took a lot of builds, right? Because you have to build the expertise around, and credit to Penn State and the plant industry and the Department of Agriculture done really a nice job. And always want to say thank you to the counties, because across the state, every county commissioner and every county team that we've worked with has been critical to that work, both in extension as well. And then it's related to, and I meant to say this really about the climate issue, this concern, when I think about climate, this concern about invasive species. And what we've seen is a proliferation of that from a climate standpoint. That goes to the Dean's point that it's not the last one, right? It's just simply going to keep building. Thanks.
Right. So very quickly, Secretary Reddy, if you had to choose one priority for advancing the agriculture industry in PA in 2024, what would it be?
Very, very quickly. I like the way you sort of slid that in there. That's good, right? It's one issue, 2 parts. And this is sort of coming out of the last number of years, and looking at the headwinds and just trying to sort of position Pennsylvania agriculture better, is the need for the business planning, a business plan, and then supported by capital, right? Every single farm is in transition, whether they know it or not, right? Mm-hmm. And to what extent, we can help them be in a position from a planning standpoint, a business plan, and then supporting capital and where we make those investments. To me, if I had one wish, is just to have folks sort of appreciate that you need a plan. Hope is good, but it's not a plan. And making sure that we have a plan, and regardless of where you are, what enterprise, and then having us as a Commonwealth being able to resource that and support it with some capital position, right? A lot of conversation. So that would be what I would want, right? Plan, finance, and capital.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So thank you for your patience. Now it's time for you to ask any questions that we have not covered yet.
Do we have any questions in the room? Okay, well, you guys are thinking about it. Oh, okay.
So yesterday, I wish I could have been here yesterday, and Secretary Redding being on stage with that number of FFA folks, just
Yeah.
amazing. So that is a potential workforce that we need to capitalize on and capture. What's the state doing and what's our college doing to grab those folks, to pull them in and keep them in the state of Pennsylvania and in agriculture?
And if we could repeat the question, just to be sure that the online audience can hear it well.
Yeah, so the question was yesterday, which is the Midwinter FFA Convention, annual convention here at the Farm Show, and Monday of Farm Show. We witnessed the largest single first year jacket ceremony. And for those not familiar with this, the FFA for the last number of years, the Alumni Association has provided every first year ag science FFA member a jacket that is sponsored by somebody. And yesterday they did 970 jackets one day. The largest single order for an FFA jacket to the National FFA Association in history. So the question is, how do you, it is a very clear illustration that there is a lot of interest in ag and growth in these ag programs. I think it's a wonderful thing. The second part of that is seeing that. How do you use that momentum? How do you harness that momentum to bring those folks into agriculture, right? The whole cornucopia of needs in the workforce. And so to answer it, I'll give you a part of it. Excuse me. It is the central issue for the new commission. I say new, it's been several years, but Stefan Fitzpatrick is our director of the Commission on Agriculture Education Excellence. Is what those, who are the students we have inside the 160 roughly ag science programs at the secondary level. And then where do they go upon graduation? Right. I think that's always been like this delta between, you have them, you've got a need, but we don't know where those students go. And they've spent 3-4 years. So we're going to begin tracking that and working with the Department of Education on that one, that issue, right, to try to do a better job.
Thank you. Other questions?
And to further what you were just talking about, now I graduated from high school many years ago, but I did graduate from high school and had an ag FFA program. But if you were considering college, you could not take the ag FFA program. You had to take the college prep program. Are these ag programs in the high schools giving the students what is necessary to pass, which are very stringent entrance requirements for Penn State?
So the question was whether ag programs in high school prepare students for the entrance requirements to college. And I would say that, yes, they do. And actually, the program that Secretary Redding has graduated many years ago, Ag Extension Education, has a very strong presence in Pennsylvania high schools. And obviously, as every curricula that Penn State does or the college does, it changes and evolves all the time. So we're trying to, by training ag teachers in high schools, we are trying to give them the necessary skills and ideas so that they could train those high school kids who could then be in turn successful candidates for a college degree and then have really strong successful careers after that. So that's an excellent question, sir, and we are absolutely on top of making sure that we are keeping up with the new requirements in a different word.
Just quickly add that annually we have an undergraduate research symposium, and every year I get to interact with undergraduate students in that program, and some of the most gifted and talented and dedicated students are those in the ag education program. And I think that if we can get those those students to go out and train the next generation, they're going to be well prepared to enter Penn State and be successful.
We still not think it live, but want to alert everyone. Thank you.
Just to connect two pieces. One, and answer the question directly, is that those ag science programs to meet the program approval requirements set forth by the Department of Education have to be certified, have to allow for the college, the content pieces that everybody who's in that, if they so desire, that programming fits into the requirements of college entrance. Okay, that's one of the.
I'm talking 65 years ago.
Yeah, yeah. But the other piece, and I did this at Del Val, one of the things that's really interesting is the articulation agreements between sort of the programs, between the ag science programs across the country and the allowance of those credits for articulation into an academic program like Del Val. We did that, talked to one of the vice presidents yesterday from Del Val. They now have 500 articulation agreements from all over the country for students who come to Del Val who receive credit as part of that entrance to Del Val, accounting towards their work in at Del Val. Many of the students, of course, are coming in for ag sciences. So thank you.
Any other questions in the room? We did have one online question, and it is about whether there is an effort to develop markets for low-grade wood that usually goes to a pulp facility. And Mary Worth is online. She can answer the question if you need the photo friend.
Let her set it up if she has an answer,
Sure.
Yeah,
and then let us.
Mary, go ahead.
Oh, well, I actually typed it in. Can you hear me?
I'll do it a different way. Guys, talk amongst yourself for 1 minute.
Okay. Oh, okay.
I can add just, this is certainly outside my area of expertise, but I have attended the last 2 years, the Wood Product Association annual meeting. And I asked very similar questions, and I sincerely think there's opportunities for industries to utilize these low-grade wood products in materials that are going to contribute to the carbon market, to gain carbon credits from using these low-value wood products and building materials. And I think the industry is very, very interested in developing that market. And I think as far as our college goes, we recognize that, in our Department of Agricultural and Biological Engineering are actively involved in some of these tools that can take wood products and understand what role that can play in carbon sequestration and contributing to a carbon market.
Right. And if I may add one point to that, I mean, just this morning, I read an article about nanoplastic particles in water containers. So I think there's going to be a growing consumer concern about plastics in general, and then low-grade bioproducts could be solution to some of these concerns. So I think this is going to be part of the discourse coming up right now.
Yeah, we have, the Hardwood Development Council in the department. They've spent a lot of time on this topic of low-grade lumber, right? Because every, one of the forest products industry folks are bumping into to lower grade product that doesn't have, it's not used in manufacturing, advanced manufacturing anyway. And I think if you connect that to, the energy conversation we're having, right? The Penn State and it's doing some really good work looking at the aviation fuel. The list is long, but I think those opportunities are certainly part of this conversation about, fiber and the use of fiber, types of fiber, low-grade lumber, and finding a way to extract value from that. The challenge, of course, is always sort of the margin, right? How do you turn a margin low-grade product? And that's either ease of access or high volumes. You've got this money involved in obviously collecting it, but is there value? Are we doing it? Yes.
So, I did get married, but we have 1 minute left.
Okay, got it. All right.
So I thought maybe closing comments was good.
All right, so I guess in closing, I would like to thank all of you for participating, and special thanks to Secretary Redding for his time today and giving us an update. And again, many thanks for the longstanding partnership between PDA and the college. And thank you so much, Blair, for handling issues that are beyond my understanding.
I'm the color commentator, I guess.
Thank you.
And if I could just say, again, sort of a note of thanks and to you and for the partnership. I think the types of questions, when I first saw them, they're really great questions, right? They force us to think about, how do you respond? What is the appropriate role, of the land grant mission? And to me, in every one of those questions, I see an expectation. If there's further clarity from somebody who's either a current stakeholder or somebody who's looking at our respective institutions and asking what is it that they do, what should they do, how do I access those services and benefit from that. So I think that's all a really good conversation. So thank you for raising that. The frontier here in the front of this year, making sure that we really think about Pennsylvania's role around the energy conversation. I think the climate components that we talked about today, being ever vigilant in the invasive world, right? The invasive species is proven, but also that we're an animal agriculture state, and ending 23 and starting the year with high path AI just sort of reminds us about that's a science issue, it's a human capital issue, it's a really important economic issue. So we need to stay together, keep working at it. Appreciate what Penn State does every day. Thank you.
Thank you.